Welcome to Pario Magazine, where I chat with individuals who have a desire to create. Today, I am joined by a comedian and theatre creator who has just developed a new show for Wollongong's Merigong Theatre Company. Welcome to Pario Magazine, Drew Fairley.
Thanks so much for having me.
How's life at the moment? Like we were just talking about, it's raining.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Actually, it's great. We've started rehearsal, so things are starting to make sense in the world because it's been a while since I've been in rehearsal. So it's feeling really good, actually.
Yeah. So we're here today to chat about your new comedic theatre show called As Luck Would Have It. Before we do that, though, do you want to give our audience a quick little introduction as to who Drew is away from the theatre and the stage?
Well, almost no one away from the theatre and the stage. I am an actor. I've been an actor for a long time and I've run comedy rooms as well all over the world and have, in the last little while, I've started moving to photography and stuff, which has really been very interesting. But traditionally, I would be, on stage in some comedy show. Often I write them. But theatre companies do employ me from time to time, so that's my gig normally.
Okay. So how did you sort of come to find this passion for comedy, theatre, live performance?
A complete and utter accident. I went to drama school and I, loved it. And I really thought I was going to be a dramatic actor until I was in the Edinburgh Fringe Festival many years ago, and I had an accordion and I thought I was going to sing some very serious Scottish songs. I've got a Scottish heritage in Edinburgh. And the minute I got up on stage, I went, I can't do it. Like there's all these proper Scots there. And so I was there with an accordion and a kind of a bad jumper. And I just kept talking. And it was very funny because I was terrified. I never played the accordion. I just did a sort of accidentally end up doing a stand-up act, and then of course I went, you're brilliant, come back tomorrow. But I just was based entirely on fear, and I meant to be, this very serious kind of, sort of gothic actor, but no, it didn't work out.
How did that sort of second show go, considering as the first one was kind of basically just improv?
Look, it went really well. I kind of, from that point onwards, I started to do shows where I'd hold something that I would never use. So the idea was you go, oh, he's going to I came in one time with a toilet roll. This is obviously way before COVID and they were rare. It was kind of quite obvious. And I never used it, I never did anything with it. I just had it. And so I then started to do, I belonged to a group of sort of stand-ups. I suppose you're randomist. So you just sort of make the show up slightly while you're there with a bit of an idea and a bit of a guide. So it's based entirely on the audience and you having an awesome time together for the 15 minutes. And so I did that for quite a while, and then I started to want to MC more. So I ended up really the thing I've done more in comedy is MC nights. And so I ran a few rooms in Edinburgh, in New York, and also in Adelaide Fringe Festival quite a bit, where comedians would come and I would sort of have the room for them.
Okay. So then how did you sort of go from that stand-up world into this new As Luck Would Have It show? How did that all come to be?
Well, it's sort of interesting. I think the world of a jobbing actor, like when you are there isn't a theatre company you necessarily always work with and you sort of work for yourself. You do a bunch of things. So I have done lots of drama. I've done film and TV, and I've done, very contemporary, bizarre performances and cabaret. And so this show, As Luck Would Have It, is a combination of a lot of those things. It is very funny, but it's also quite tragic because it's sort of looking at sort of a grief. A lot of things in my personal life, there's been a lot of death and horrificness. But I think like all comedians and all people who want to survive, you sort of make a joke out of it. So it's about both those things together. And I think stand-up comedy is quite a tragic place. There's a lot of sad people who do stand-up. It's, the sad clown is a real thing. There's a lot of loneliness. There's a lot of all that stuff. So it does work for a drama as well. I think it does work where, you know, you see this the stand-up comedian being hilarious, and they go backstage and they really, you know, they haven't really got anyone in their life, and they're sort of in hotel rooms, and there's, you know, there's sort of that side as well.
I guess you do need those sort of lower points in the show so that then when the actual joke hits, it hits a bit harder.
Yeah, completely. I couldn't agree more. I feel, um, you know, really hilarious sort of stand-up style comedy and drama aren't put together very often, but I think they should be. I think it's how the world is. I feel like that everyone in the last couple of years, particularly, has really found a way to laugh, and sometimes in the most horrific situations, trapped, locked away, unable to see their friends or whatever, and they sort of play with the madness. And certainly, if you've been on TikTok or, you know, any of the social media platforms, you've seen a lot of comedy from people who are not necessarily comedians, but, you know, I think they've just gone to a point where they have to laugh at it. So I think they do go together.
And in terms of that idea of being locked away and needing to find a way to laugh through it, that's kind of where this show comes from, I believe, when you were stuck on a cruise ship.
Yeah, I was. I was stuck on a cruise ship. So, you know, when lockdown started in March in 2020, I had just the day before lockdown started boarded a cruise ship for my very first job on a cruise ship. And I had never been on a ship before. I didn't know what they did. It was my first day at work. And then the next day, the ship shut down. And it shut down for a couple of weeks in Sydney at the dock. Then, you know, a few other things happened, but eventually we got exiled from Australia. So not only did I just step on one day and then it was sort of like everything was weird, but then I never stepped off. I never saw the ship from the outside. I didn't know what it looked like when I was on it. And we were eventually exiled, well, with sort of, the Australian government asked all ships, all cruise ships to leave Australian waters, all cruise ships, including Australian cruise ships. And so suddenly there was nowhere in the world to go. And so I was in the Pacific, like going over the equator, when I really thought I was just going to step off a few days later. And then that turned into a couple of months in Manila Bay.
Was that I imagine that was a very tough experience. Were you like locked in your cabin, or were you allowed to like venture out on the ship?
We weren't, so we weren't locked in our cabin unless there was some COVID, unless there was some, we were tested every day. It was very ship shape, pardon the pun, but no one had COVID on the ship. So we could move around, but there was this very weird experience where the whole ship was also being shut down. So there wasn't sort of the ballrooms or, you know, and the big theaters and everything all being wrapped in plastic and all the furniture pushed over to the side and sort of put into storage. So nothing was even the cafes, you know, used to be a few, and then they just started shutting down. And there was, you know, there was points where you walk through rooms, you go, there's nothing. It's like walking through a warehouse, but also, you know, filled with party kind of things. It was harder when we got to the Philippines. We went to the Philippines to release the Filipino crew, of which there were many members. I think it was about 400 Filipino crew, but they were in lockdown for 40 days in their cabins for 40 days. Wow. Because of this endless negotiation with the Filipino government. So they, you know, yeah, they really felt it. I mean, we did everything we could, and we sort of, you know, every day we'd knock on the door, go, hey, how you doing? Like just try, because they had to be in quarantine, also they couldn't get off. Anyway, yeah, it was, but we were free. It was just, we were free to move around. It just sort of had its own sort of weird prison because it was so removed from family and friends.
Mm-hmm. And then I imagine, obviously, once that sort of exile period ended, was the transition back to regular life on land just as difficult?
Look, I'd say I had this really different approach to quarantine when I came back to Australia. I was in a hotel, and the other thing to add on the ship is there was no internet. So it was very bad. There was none, and then it was very bad. And so I couldn't connect with people. And suddenly I was in this hotel in Sydney with 5G. I was in seventh heaven. I loved that hotel with all my heart. But unfortunately, when I got back to Australia, one of the problems of being on the ship, and particularly for a long period of time was that my mother had dementia and unfortunately passed away when I came back. And then immediately my dad ended up having stage 4 cancer and also has passed away. So the ship itself is sort of the beginning of this very lengthy journey of kind of, playing your A game in your life and having to come up with the goods. I was also, one of the carers for both those people. So I was sort of in a different thing. And during quarantine, during lockdown and COVID restrictions in nursing homes, all that stuff. So there was sort of the ship, although it was traumatic, it was the beginning of a fairly traumatic couple of years.
And is that where sort of the idea to let's try and make light of this and find the funny moments in this came about?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's sort of, there's such a silver lining to be found in everything. And I think, this is what the play is about, is finding a silver lining, but also sometimes when you just focus on the silver lining, you never deal with anything in the black cloud. So there's sort of this, cat and mouse game that goes on between going, I've got to cheer up, to going, I've just got to work out what I'm really feeling. And as an adult, any adult, I think will say, there's just no time to sort of deal with some of life's troubles. It's actually sometimes you go, it's better if I just, have a laugh at it and try and connect with people, because the connection, being very sad can be very isolating, and then you don't connect with others, and actually connecting with others is almost always the way out of bad times.
I imagine that was a difficult process, but was creating this show also like really beneficial for you? It lets you sit and think about these things?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a great fan of creativity. I'm a great fan of using creation to balance out the destruction in your life. And I really think that in the worst times in people's lives, often, if they write a beautiful song, or if they kind of even do a dance, or even if they do the garden nicely, they just inevitably feel better because you've sort of made something in the world. And there's been lots and lots of destruction of things in the last couple of years, but probably always. And creation is really happy making. That's a weird way of putting it, but it is. I feel like the show has brought up a lot. Like this first week of rehearsals has been quite hard because we have to relive. I have to relive some of the most difficult moments of my life in order to present the whole package. But at the same time, it's been really fun, and I think that I just think that's life. I think most people have had huge trauma. It's much more common than we think, and I don't want to sort of shy away from those things. But at the same time, I do want us all to have, to just know we're going to have a laugh. We're all going to, laughter and creativity is great medicine.
And yeah, you mentioned it sort of being difficult to now revisit these topics and issues. Is it also exciting to be finally getting the show out and sharing it with the world on an actual live stage rather than previously it was a video series?
Yeah, it's nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking because a lot of it is very, very personal, and I don't think that it's the sharing aspect feels really fine, but it's also going into a world where audiences are going to come in and think whatever they want, and I can't control that, and I don't know them. So there's that weird experience of going, when you're talking to friends about your problems is one thing, but when you put it out there for an audience to see, it's quite different. And the reason I'm putting it out there for the audience to see is because I think there's something to be learned by watching a show. I think it can help. I think people will actually be able to sort of connect to some of their own, the cracks in their facade as well, the places they're plunged to, and actually feel, I hope, okay about that, because we should all feel okay about, falling down.
And I imagine sort of the idea of lockdowns and COVID, that's kind of a shared experience with everybody in the world now. It's not
Mm.
a specific group of people that have these same experiences.
Yeah, yeah. It's really ununique. I mean, this is I think it's a great leveler, COVID and COVID restrictions, and wherever you sat on the major spectrum of, 2 and 4 arguments for, vaccines and masks, and it doesn't matter where you sat on that, but everyone has put a lot of energy and time into either, shutting their life down or refusing to, or whatever they've done. But I think we've all shared that. And it is an important time for humanity. I think that we are never before can I look at any single person and know at least a part of how they've felt. You can see people in the supermarket and go, I know sort of how you felt over the last couple of years, and in a way that we'd never be able to do before, or probably ever again.
And like I mentioned, this show started out as a video series called Actual Cabin, Actual Fever. How did
Yeah.
you then transition that to become a stage show? Was that a difficult process?
Not especially, because Actual Cabin Actual Fever was very random. I just was doing little videos on the ship, and it hit a big audience because of the themes. And the themes were sort of making do in a terrible, like making lemonade out of lemons. It was a silver lining show, and it was very funny, but it was quite and I really did lose. There's one particular episode where I do kind of lose it. I lose it and I'm laughing, but there's a really specific moment. It's a very weird episode. And I feel like what I've done is taken the feelings in there and actually, living on a ship is weird. I've used those things as the sort of stand-up aspect of the show. And then I've just sort of gone, but also there's this sort of dark cloud. And when I put that in as well with the sort of light, fun stuff that was happening in Actual Cabin, Actual Fever, together, those two things create the show. So it's sort of it's not an exact. So in a way, it's not just Actual Cabin, Actual Fever on stage. It is certainly the themes, and certainly me, and the characters are the same. But they're just it's just a sort of a deeper look.
Um, and then now that we're coming out of sort of the pandemic environment, things are opening back up. How do you feel this show now translates? Is it still relevant today?
Yeah, because it's a show it's sort of quite classic in that way, because like I was saying, we've all had this bizarre, deep look at ourselves over the last few years. And artists always do that. It's actually what all art is created, from this very deep look at yourself and the world and, society and your position within the world and all that stuff. So in some ways, the show is quite classic. It just really is about, battling the odds in some ways. And it just happens to be so bonkers because it's stuck on a cruise ship, and there's all the weird things that happen on the ship, but also the sort of, mental condition and the emotional turmoil. That story is quite classic. In fact, there's been, ancient Greek plays often sort of touch similar themes. So it's very classic. And I think that the other great thing is, because it's a comedy, it'll touch, like, you certainly when you're watching it, I think people will go, oh yeah, that's sort of, I sort of remember that, but it's not a diary entry of what happened during COVID. It's more, how do humans make it? how do they, our little bizarre species, how do we get ourselves out of a pickle?
Mm-hmm. And as we mentioned, the show is coming to Wollongong's Merry-Gong Theatre at the end of July. How are you feeling ahead of the opening performance?
Good. I feel very prepared, as far as we've really done a lot of work on it. It's also, look, really the audience is the other cast member. It's really important to, when the audience is in there, to see how it rolls. We have a really strong team, and it's incredibly creative. There are original songs, there's beautiful movement, there's kind of huge epic sort of staging. There's quite a lot, and stand-up. There's quite odd things together, so it's super entertaining. I suppose really at the end of the day, I hope that people really have a good laugh, and I hope they really feel good about themselves when they've had a good cry in the show.
Have you performed at the Merigong Theatre previously?
I have. Yes, I have. I've done a few shows there over the years, and then I was often in the fantastic Vault Cabaret, and the Vault Cabaret was in Port Kembla for years, and still one of the best cabarets. I've performed around the world. It is still one of the best cabarets I've ever done. I was in it a lot. I loved it. And when it went to Merigong Theatre Company as Treasures from the Vault, I was often in that, and adored it.
What is it about the Merigong Theatre Company that makes it so special, do you think?
I think it has, look, it's just in a very interesting position within Australian theatre. It's a very big, very important theatre as far as it produces beautiful shows and has, absolutely top of the range staff, etc. But it's also in a, I suppose, slightly, it's urban, but it's a regional kind of area. Like it's not in a major city. So it has the benefit of very local stories. You can actually go and see a story and go, yeah, I know that place, or I know what that is. And then the standard is incredibly high. So it is in a very unique position within Australian theatre, and I think it has, for years and years and years, proven itself as a real star in Australian theatre.
And then after the season in Wollongong, is there hopes of taking this show on the road around the country?
Look, there are hopes. We shall see. But there's nothing in writing. But yeah, there are hopes, and I would love that to happen. I think it's sort of like, I think it is an entertaining show that is kind of a bit of a pat on the back for all of us who survived. So yeah, but we'll see. Nothing in writing at the moment.
Okay. And then obviously people can buy tickets now at the Merigong website, but for people that want to follow you personally in your journey moving forward, where is the best place for people to do that?
Oh, they can just go to my Insta page, which is Droozah, DROOZAH, and I'm on there. And in fact, you can see, because Actual Cabaret Actual Fever, when I was on the ship, was an IGTV show. They can watch the entire. There are 2 series, and you can watch the descent into madness, episode by episode.
Perfect. They can get a little taster of what's to come on the stage.
Yeah. Exactly.
Alrighty. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me, and good luck with the shows.
My pleasure. Thanks so much. What a great interview. Thank you.